It is a common axiom in business that 95% of a company's potential market is located overseas. A company that limits itself to sales generated within domestic borders is missing out on the potential to grow its business exponentially. With Business Perspective's comprehensive coverage of overseas market trends and dynamics, there is no way you're missing out on this growth potential. Hello and a warm welcome. I am Jackie Mutasi. Let's have a look at what's coming up in the show this week.
Between March and this time in August, a lot of companies have expressed interest in investing in Uganda.
We think that by participating in this summit, we will indirectly impact the lives of the everyday Ugandan through agriculture, through infrastructure development, through attracting the right investors to come and invest in Uganda.
Having this summit is going to enhance our market for our products.
Last week, Business Perspective took an all-inclusive look at strengthening bilateral ties between Uganda and South Africa. This week, we are glad you have joined us for the second half of this conversation. The focus, however, changes a little to the Uganda-South Africa Trade and Investment Summit, a pivotal event that holds the promise of propelling economic growth and collaboration between the two nations.
Uganda and South African governments have enjoyed warm and friendly relations since the signing of a formal diplomatic relation agreement in 1994. The bilateral relations have also helped promote trade and investment between the two countries. Latest data from the Bank of Uganda shows that the East African nation and South Africa's trade volumes increased from merely $76 million in 1999 to $334 million in 2019 before slowing down to $148 million in 2022 owing to the effects of the coronavirus pandemic. However, these trade volumes are in favor of South Africa because it exports mostly high-value products such as machinery, chemicals, plastics, electronics, live animals, books and newsprint, textiles, footwear, aircrafts, and household goods. On the other hand, Uganda exports products such as cotton, gold, tobacco, coffee, and fresh flowers. It is on this basis that Uganda and South African governments have organized a second leg of Trade and Investment Summit to be held in Kampala next month to actualize deals and initiatives that started during the first summit held in Pretoria, South Africa in February this year. The first summit registered numerous successes for the two countries, including signing 3 agreements in the areas of promotion and protection of investments, bilateral trade, and the establishment of a joint permanent commission.
Stephen, while we look ahead to the second Uganda-South Africa Trade Summit, perhaps you can talk to us about the highlights and the outcomes of the first one in February.
Yeah, so the summit in February and March was the first of its kind between Uganda and South Africa. Previously, the summits were political and they were based on diplomatic and political discussions. So as Private Sector Foundation, we met with a couple of private sector players in South Africa, mainly the Ugandan business community in Southern Africa. So South Africa, Botswana, Mozambique, Namibia. And we felt that summits from now onwards should really include the business community. And so PSF offered to be the secretariat of the Ugandan contingent. And so we went to South Africa and had sideline meetings with the business community. In our view, it was a very successful meeting, the first of its kind, and we came out with some very good discussion points that would then lead to. Now, in those meetings, we mooted a couple of things. Number one was the need to increase trade and investment between Uganda and South Africa.
This is a government-to-government initiative. Why would MTN, a telecommunications company, choose to get involved in the Uganda-South Africa Trade and Investment Summit?
Thank you, Jackie. So MTN, as you know, is a South African company, largely owned by MTN International, but it does have a large portion of it that's owned by Ugandan retail investors, shareholders. MTN has, as part of its strategic objectives, a nation-state's agenda that it seeks to implement in every country that it operates. part of this nation state's agenda is to align ourselves with the national development objectives of the country. So in Uganda, we are aligned to the National Development Plan, NDP 3, I believe it is. And one of the tenets of NDP 3 is to uplift the lives of the everyday Ugandan, the Muntu wa wansi, as we say. And so we think that by participating in this summit, we will indirectly impact the lives of the everyday Ugandan through agriculture, through infrastructure development, through attracting the right investors to come and invest in Uganda, and thereby uplift the economic status of Uganda.
Now, coming off of that back end, what are the potential benefits, especially for Ugandan businessmen and women?
So if you look at Uganda as a business case, Uganda is one of the biggest agriculture exporters, but we export most of our products in raw form. So raw coffee, tea, raw minerals, fish products. We don't export processed stuff. So we get very little money in terms of our earnings. South Africa is the biggest industrial player on the continent. They in turn have got very big leverage. They have got a history of industrialization, their IT, their financial system, their trade regime is very, very advanced. But being an African country, it was necessary that then we discuss elements of technology transfer, joint ventures. So essentially we invited South African companies to come to Uganda and be part of the industrial transformation and value addition regime. So that was very good for us. So between March and this time in August, a lot of companies have expressed interest in investing in Uganda.
I see, Enid, as MTN, you've been in this market for over 20 years.
Yes.
Perhaps you can share your views on the business environment here in Uganda and where the opportunities lie for South African businesses.
25 years this year, October, will be MTN's life in Uganda. And I can tell you that it's been an exciting journey. So the economy is growing, right? As I said, there are areas that we could improve. For instance, high cost of devices, taxation, we could improve our infrastructure. We have started to see regulatory stability, which was not always something we could take for granted. We've seen political stability, which is a good thing for an investor. We have a very youthful population. That speaks to availability of the market. And that's exactly what MTN has anchored its portion of its business on. So the business environment could be better, but with resilience and with very strategic alignment to proper stakeholders, I think that any business can thrive in Uganda.
What is the role of the private sector in achieving these goals?
In all spheres of engagement, we have a mantra here that business is government sector-led, private sector-driven. Once the protocols are signed, it's the private sector that takes the day. Private sector is the biggest employer of any sphere of engagement. The private sector employs more people than government. The private sector pays taxes. Those taxes go to the treasury. The treasury then allocates that money in the national budget. When they read the budget on June the 3rd, they're basically saying, this is the money we collected from you, and this is how we're going to spend it. It's only fair that the private sector takes the lead in terms of growing that profile. Like I said earlier, a lot of our business engagements are largely very, very primary products. So raw coffee, raw maize, raw iron ore. We need to transform that into steel. For that to happen, we need incentives. We need financial support. We need to mechanize. We need to train our private sector to skill business development services. All those things boost an economy and essentially create jobs, bring in income. But at the end of the day, we need to export. But we don't need to export at the primary level again. We need to export at value addition. And that sometimes does not come easy. That's why we are discussing the need to have joint ventures and basically scale up our capacity to earn more, and then of course grow the economy. So the private sector is critical. Hundreds of companies are coming. We at Private Sector Foundation have been very pivotal in ensuring that we have as many members coming onto the table.
For the businessmen and women who are looking forward to this summit, can you talk to us about what is actually going to happen at the Uganda-South Africa Trade and Investment Summit?
The summit takes place on the 5th and the 6th of September. We will have several set-up areas. In the main area, we'll have a plenary session for 2 days where we will have interactions between governments, the South African government and the Ugandan government, to continue discussions around business issues such as visas, such as infrastructure development, such as taxes, business that concerns the government, things that the government would deal with, policy issues. We will also have investor-to-investor discussions. We have linked Ugandan investors interested in exporting their produce to South Africa with South African businesses. We have invited South African investors to come and explore what Uganda can offer. We have people in tourism, we have people in hospitality, we have people in agriculture. We've also had people in oil and gas, timber, dairy, meat production, cereals, grain production, and so we think that the South African businesses can come and add value to the Ugandan producers.
How do you envision private sector of both Uganda and South Africa coming together to grow both of our countries' economies?
At the summit, BUSA, which is the Business South Africa, and the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda came together, and we shared a joint communique. That joint communique proposed 4 things. Number 1, the need to grow business. How do you grow business? You must understand what is available, what you can sell, what you can buy, what you can improve. The second point was joint ventures. We are not complete in ourselves. So they have what we don't have, we have what they don't have. We come together and we have a business discussion. The third thing was direct investment. We asked them to come and invest more in Uganda, even though they are the biggest investor, but we hardly have any investment in South Africa. So we suggested that, can we have investment opportunities for Uganda in South Africa? South Africa is a net importer of coffee. We are a net exporter of coffee, but they import processed coffee, which is coming from Uganda, but is coming from Europe at almost 3 times the price. So we said, wait a minute, this is not nuclear science. We can actually invest in South Africa, send our top grade coffee, process it there, have it branded in South Africa and Uganda. In any case, it's coming from here. And then we have a win-win situation. So that was the joint venture. That was the element of investment. The fourth was technology transfer. Again, South Africa is a leader in lots of technologies, mainly agriculture. That is lacking here, and it's affecting our productivity, it's affecting our ability to earn, to employ, but also we are now going through, you've been hearing issues of standards, aflatoxins, mycotoxins. That is technological. It's about harvest, post-harvest, storage, warehouse receipt systems, etc., which are very advanced, but they are not very complicated. So we are saying, let's have that system here, and let's share the dividends that will come from it.
Wash and Wales, a Greek mechanization specializing in assembly of advanced equipment designed to enhance farmer productivity, is one of the local companies gearing up for the summit.
I would say that we are very proud as Wash and Wales, because we act as a link to mechanization between us and the farmers.